times I do this, I can never find it. I shove the cat so people can see. Come on, cat, off you go. Right, so standing hip mobility work then. So we're starting off, let's go standing on left leg, doesn't really matter, we're going to do both sides, but just hurdles to start with. So right leg coming up into flexion, just knee as high as possible. You're going to allow the pelvis to turn as you take the leg out to the side, like taking your leg over a fence, and then placing it down to the side, as far back as you can. So it goes to be this big arch really. So picking it back up on that same angle, back over your fence, out in front, up, out to the side, and over. And you can work through these at your own speed, you know, if you're kind of having to work with your balance a little bit. But it wants to be as sort of slow and controlled as you can. And just over your fence and back again. So you're mobilising the hip that's obviously doing the over the fence bit, but because you're allowing your pelvis to move at the same time, you're actually mobilising the other hip as well. So that hip's turning in and out relative to your pelvis. And we're going to come back to square, and then we're going to switch. So standing on the right leg, bring the left leg up into flexion, take it out to the side, as far as it will go, and drop it down, up and over, and back round. And just notice if you've got one side that's more awesome than the other. So switching sides, up and over. And you can hold on to something here. If your balance proves to be like the sticking point and you want to get more hip work, by all means hold on to a wall or a chair or something. If you're working on your balance, then obviously do it without. And last one, bring it over and release. And then we're going to go wide through the legs. So we're doing a sumo squat. So you want to be quite wide, certainly wider than usual. Your feet want to be turned out a little bit. And if you look at the angle of your feet, when you drop down, that's the angle that the knees go. And you want to be as upright as you can be. Your knees pressing out over your toes. They don't want to be collapsing in. And you want to make sure that you've got weight on the outside edge of your foot, not just all into the big toe. So you want balanced weight across the front of the foot. You could go prayer hands, you can counterbalance with the hands out in front. I kind of like prayer hands. So we're holding, and then we're going to take it slowly up. So when you squat down, just make sure that you're driving the knees out and finding that balanced weight across the foot through the whole movement. And then as you come up as well. So driving the knees out, weight through the little toe as well as the big toe, and then back up. So in other words, I'm not kind of getting down there and then organising everything. I'm trying to get into the, I'm going to call it the correct position to start with, but you get the idea. Nice and tall through the spine. Trying to keep the tailbone stuck out. So I'm not tucking under at any point. You can really feel it's a deeper stretch into the groin. And into the hips as well. And up, and then on this next one, we take it down and hold. We're going to do a little shift. So take it down exactly the same way, and then shifting from side to side. You're going to stay nice and upright, just exploring. There's no real right or wrong with this. Just letting the hips shift from side to side, swaying your bottom back through center, and then lift. Sway at the top if you need to, just loosen things off. And then we're going to come down and we're going to do some rotation. So same thing, squat yourself down. Then you're going to take your, if we're going to the right leg, you're going to take your left hand onto your right ankle or calf, whatever you can get hold of down that side. The right hand onto the knee. I'm going to pull with the left hand, push with the right hand, and look up over my right shoulder. We'll hold and breathe. And then release. And then we go to the other side. So right hand holds left ankle, left hand on the knee. Pull with the right hand, push with the left hand, and rotate up towards the ceiling. And slowly release. And then we're going to come right back down. We're not even being there yet. Back down onto the mat or down onto the mat. Look her off you. So from here, turn so that you've got more mass in front of you, and I'm just going to find a squat from here. So I've got my toes tucked under already. I'm slightly wider than hip distance. I'm going to push myself back into what I call the goblin squat, which is just where the heels are off. And then I'm going to try and sink my heels down onto the floor. And once I'm there, I'm just going to rock from side to side. So this tiny little squat position, I'm flexing through the spine because we're in sort of at the bottom of the squat. It's not an active squat, it's almost like a rest position. You can use the elbows into your knees to push out. But I'm just shifting from side to side. One heel's coming up, one heel's coming down, or I keep both down and kind of just move about in the bottom of the squat. And just seeing what range you've got. There's no right or wrong with the feet in terms of placement. So I'm taking them a little bit wider now, just walking them out a little bit. And then best you can, the best deep squat that you've got with the heels as down as possible. Yeah. And then from there, I'm going to come up onto the outside edge of my right foot. So I'm trying to peel my foot off the floor and take my knee out to the side and place it back down. Same on the other side, peeling up onto the outside edge and release. Peeling up, the knee goes further out and release. One more on the other side and release. And then put your hands down on the floor to push yourself up and out of that position. Good. So we're coming into an elephant walk. So you want your feet about hip distance apart. Bend your knees as much as you need to drape your belly over your thighs, and then tent the fingers on the floor in front of your feet. You can let the head hang, but the idea is you really want to get as much of your body touching your thigh as possible. And then you're going to keep your body on your thigh. I'm going to straighten one leg. Might not go straight, that's fine. As soon as you feel the stretch, let it go. Straighten the other leg, let it go. Straighten the other leg, let it go. So you get the idea. So if you were to look at me from the back as I'm switching sides, my kind of hips are rocking from side to side. Hence the name elephant walk. I suppose you're supposed to look like an elephant. I don't look like an elephant from the rear, but you get the idea. So as much of your body touching your legs as possible, and keeping it touching as you bend and straighten one leg, or each leg, opposite legs. Alternating, that's the word I'm looking for. And then pause with the knees bent. Take hold of your ankles this time. You can take your hands behind the ankle if you can. Let the head drape again. So you're trying to get as much, even more flexion. And then same thing. Knee bends, knee straightens. Switching sides. Last couple, and then release. And same thing, bring your hands down to the mat, walk yourself out so that you can bring the knees down. Actually, I'll stay this way. And once you're down on all fours, you're going to bring your, let's go right foot. So right foot on the outside of your right hand. Sink the hips forward into your lunge position, or into a lunge position. So sink the hips down. And same thing here, I'm just rocking the hips from side to side. You can make circles with the hips. You're just wiggling things loose. And just see where it's tight, sees what restricted at this moment in time. And then that same thing again of peeling the foot up onto the outside edge and the foot going out to the middle. You probably find it's easier when you do one leg at a time. So knee out and then foot comes back down. Knee out to the side, foot comes back down. So there's value to keeping the hips still. And then there's kind of, I'm almost like I'm taking my body with me as well. So I'm bringing the leg out to the side, And then I go with the pelvis as well. So I'm kind of leaning in that direction and then coming back. So the leg goes, and then I can take my pelvis across as well. Leg, hips, and back. Leg, hips, and back. And I'm going to switch sides. So take the right knee back where it came from, into the right hip. Left knee or left foot comes outside the left hand. Same thing again, just sink the hips forward and rock the hips or circle, just exploring where it feels like on that side. Wiggle it about, that's the technical term. Same thing again, peeling the foot off the floor, outside edge, knee goes out to the side, and then bring it back to your shoulder. And you can add in the hip sway as well. Or just keep it with the knee going out so it's more in the hip. Like I say, there's no right or wrong, you're literally just wiggling things free, looking for your own lines of tension, working out where you need to spend a bit of time, little wiggles, little oscillations into the joint. And then release. And we're going to come into our 90-90 position to start with. So if you are facing forward on your mat, in whichever fashion you are facing forward, your front thigh, if you like, wants to come straight out of the hip socket in front of you. And then when your other leg is at 90-90, the foot, the knee, and the other foot will all be in one line. So depending on how that feels, you may find you need to kickstand your hand to keep you upright. So when I find a true 90-90 position on this side, I find it very difficult to stay upright without kickstanding. I'm not so bad on the other side, but we're just pausing here just to see how it feels. And ideally, you want your chest lined up with the front thigh, yeah? So if I was to drop my chest forward, my chin and my chest would go over the front knee in a straight line. So wherever you need your hands to make that happen. But like I say, we're just holding in this position. While you're here, you want to think about sitting your back sit bone down towards the floor. Might not get there, that's okay. You really want to sit down into that kind of position. So this is just a passive stretching 90-90. And passively stretching the back leg in internal rotation, the front leg in external rotation. So we're going to add to that. I'm going to take your chest forward. So if you was to say you're leading with your belly button, I'm leading with my belly button, keeping my chest up to pull myself down into a bit more of a stretch. What I'm not doing is rounding the spine. Not that that's wrong, it's just not what we're after today. So I'm trying to keep my tailbone lifted at the back, keeping my chest lifted at the front. So we're going to add in a contraction here. So I want you to imagine that you are pressing your ankle and foot and your knee, front knee and ankle and foot, down into the floor, like you're trying to push through the floor. And it'll be your glute muscle that you're using to do that. And if I had a scale under my ankle and a scale under my knee, I'll be trying to put more weight through, more weight through, more weight through. And I'm ramping up the amount of oomph I'm putting into this contraction. I'll ramp it up, ramp it up, ramp it up. Push it down into the floor. If you could see me close up, you can see I'm shaking with the effort I'm putting into trying to put that knee through the floor, knee and ankle. Push down, push down, push down. And then don't back off all at once, back off slowly like you did putting it on, take it off again, nice and slow. So the weight gets less and less in the ankle. And then you're going to use the muscles at the front of the thigh to pull you into the stretch even more. So I'm not just using gravity, it's almost like I'm trying to pick this knee up off the floor now and the foot trying to pick them up, which pulls me further into the stretch. And we hold in that new range. You might have got more range, you might not. It is where it is. The more you do it, the more you get, within reason. And then slowly back out of that, and we'll switch sides. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line up my shin with the front of the mat so that my thigh is coming directly out of my body, which then leaves me with a straight line between foot, knee, shin, and the opposite foot. And then again, lining up my chest, chest with the front thigh and knee. Take the fingers. You might need to lean away from it a little bit, or you might be able to stay more upright on this side. You are where you are. And the same thing, just take the belly button forward and find the stretch, or a stretch. Doesn't feel like a stretch to me on this side, it just feels like a deep, kind of weird sensation in the back of my hip. So just holding to start with. And then same again, I've got a scale under my knee, scale under my ankle, and start putting weight down. I'm ramping it up, building, 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 pushing down, ankle, knee, pushing them through the floor, ramping it up, ramping it up, ramping it up. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Whatever you've got, keep going, keep going, keep going. And then back off, nice and steady as you back off. As you breathe out, almost like you're trying to lift that foot off the floor. Lifting the foot off the floor is going to pull you further into that stretch. So I'm still leading with the belly button, trying to get my belly button on my knee, chest going forward. I can actually bring the hands forward. So if you are finding that you're getting a little bit of extra range and you want to bring the hands forward, you can. Pulling yourself forward and down. Hold and breathe. And then slowly release back off out of that. Unravel the legs. I'm going to come to our frog position. I'm trying to think which one I want to start with. Let's go with a traditional frog, my traditional frog. So wide through the knees. Hands under shoulders, feet slightly wider than your knees. And just take a moment there. So see if you can untuck your tailbone even more. So you're uncurling your tailbone. So even the act of actively lifting your tail to the sky might give you a sensation of stretching to the groin. Might do, doesn't mean. And then keeping the tail lifted, just start to rock forwards and back. And keep it small to start with. It might stay small. I don't have a lot of range of movement in this position, I have to stay. And keep actively uncurling or untucking your tailbone. Really trying to get my tail lifted to the sky. Nice easy breathing. And you see if the hips start to give a little bit. And you just wiggle them backwards and forwards. And then take it back wherever back is for you and hold there. And then the contraction here is slightly pressing both knees down into the ground again, and the feet as well. So I'm pressing all that good stuff into the ground. But it's almost like if the floor wasn't there, your knees would come together. Yeah, so it's almost like I'm trying to gather the mat with my legs and pull my knees towards each other, which obviously feels like down into the floor. But I'm doing the feet as well, I'm not just doing the knees, I'm actively using the feet. Everything down into the floor and then pulling together. Ramp it up, ramp it up, ramp it up. Keep pushing, or pulling, however you want to describe it. And then back off that contraction. Release as much as you can. Now, this one, you can really relax into it. See if you can just let that tension go in the groin. And then just nice and gently rock forward back. You might find, like I can go now another couple of inches wider through the knees. You might not. And then wherever your hands are, bring your elbows down. You need to back off that stretch a little bit, feel free. Otherwise, keep the knees where they are to start with. And then taking that into the leg twist. So as I come forward, just to start with, I'm just going to pick the foot off the floor and keep everything else stable. So everything else square, just lifting the foot off the floor and then placing it back down and rocking back. Rocking forward, foot coming off the floor, placing it back down and taking my hips back. Hips forward, foot up, foot down, hips back, hips forward, foot up, foot down, hips back. So sometimes we do this big, and we will get to big. But for right now, trying to just see how much internal rotation you have of your thigh bone in your hip socket without that kind of, I'm going to call it cheating. It's not cheating because it's natural movement, but without cheating by letting the hip drop towards the floor. Nice and gentle. And then you may need to take your hands slightly further away from you, so you're in a bit more spread out position, so that as you bring one leg up, I'm going right leg, so right foot is coming up, it's going to drive my right hip down to the floor, and I'm going to turn away from that leg. I'm trying almost like to get this ankle bone down to the floor, and then I'm going to push back. Don't forget the back as you push right back, and then go again on the other side. So left foot coming up, drives the hip down to the floor, turn over the opposite shoulder, and then pushing back. And the push back's a little bit, if your arms are further forward, you have to, extend a little bit further to get back into that stretch at the back of the movement. Same on the other side. And just keep switching from side to side. So there's a tendency, or you probably will, so as the hip come down and you're looking away, you probably find that you just almost relax into it, that you can just kind of flop down and let the hip rest and the foot come over, and it kind of becomes all passive and floppy. See if you can keep it active. So the hip touches, but I'm not losing the tension, if you like. I'm not just kind of resting on the floor. And keeping my body weight out of that hip. So it touches and I'm really twisting the thigh bone in the socket and taking it back, and we'll make that the last one. Wiggle your arms in, wiggle your legs in. Wiggle the hips if you need to. And then we're going to come into our shoulder twist. So big toes are going to come together. Knees not too wide this time, slightly wider than hip distance. So you've got the options of sort of bringing the hands forward, palms on the floor, fingertips outside shoulders, so wide, at sort of 3 and 9. If my head's at 12, my hands are sort of 3 and 9. So then as I bend the left arm, the right shoulder drops down to the floor, and I'm looking over my left shoulder, back up through center, switching sides. So I'm pushing with the left hand to drive the left front of the shoulder into the mat and turning the head. Pushing away with the right to drive the front of the right shoulder. And again, if you are kind of looser than the average bear, you're going to have to find your, you're going to have to find the stretch almost, because you'll find it kind of easy to get into it. So try and find your line of tension. You might find that you want to drop the armpit more towards the floor. So angle the armpit, or you might want to try and drop the top of the shoulder down towards the floor. It's the top of the shoulder one in this position that gets me, like really turning my my arm inwards to try and get the top of the shoulder on the floor. And then try a different angle with the arms. So if you go 5 to 1, same thing, pushing with one hand, bending the opposite elbow, and switching from side to side. Yeah, make this your last one. And then we're going to come down into the front shoulder stretch. So if you lie down, face down on your mat, and again, if my head's number 12 on the clock, I'm going to go number 3 with my right arm, or 3 o'clock with my right arm. So straight out to the side to start with. The left hand is my kickstand, it's going to push me over. I'm going to start to turn the hips, bending my left knee, so it points to the ceiling. I might not be quite at the ceiling, that's okay. And then just see if you can rotate a little bit further. Nice and gentle though. It's a big stretch for the front of the shoulder and the chest. And then roll away, back through center, and go 9 o'clock with the left hand. Rolling over onto that side. So I'm going to do this as we've just done it, kind of passive. And then the next round, we'll add in a contraction. Make sure you breathe in. And then gently roll back that stretch. So when you do the contraction, you've probably already cottoned on to what it's going to be. You're going to press everything from your hand, your forearm, your elbow, and as much of your upper arm as you can. You're going to press that down through the floor. So switching sides, 3 o'clock. Roll over into the stretch, hold it there for a moment, and then start to ramp up your contraction. So I'm pushing down into the floor, and just if you start to feel any pinching as you do this isometric contraction, just back off and hold the stretch, right? So no pinching allowed. I'm pressing down, pressing down, pressing down, keep pressing, keep pressing, keep pressing, press, 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 keep pressing. Back off, breathe out, just see if you can roll into that stretch a little bit more. And then slowly roll back through center. Backing out a bit nice and steady. Switching sides, out to 9 o'clock. Roll the body over. Just hold and breathe. So when we're doing these contraction type stretches to try and just gain that little bit of extra range of movement, the breathing becomes a little bit more important. I'm going to slow the breathing down so you're calming down the nervous system, which in turn will help you get into a little bit of a deeper range of movement. That's the theory. Let's work like that. Okay, so we're ready, pressing down into the floor. Everything from your fingertips, your palm, the forearm, the elbow, the upper arm. Keep breathing, keep pushing down. Breathe, 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 push, push, push. Back off that contraction nice and gently, and then just see if you can roll that a little bit further. In this position, you might not get that much further. You can't get, you know, we're about at the extreme limit really, but it might just feel that little bit easier to be there. Might not. We're just holding and contracting stretches a little bit longer this evening, it's just something different. Same movements, different process. And then nice and easy, rolling out of that position, nice and gentle. We are going to do the sort of 5 to 1-ish. So if we had 3 o'clock before, about halfway, 7.5 minutes, yeah, about 5 past. You can play with the angle. It's not that I'm dictating, but usually that sort of halfway point gives you the most sort of stretch in the front of the pack and bicep, that kind of area. So you can play with the angles, feel free. Otherwise, it's the same thing. So choose an angle and then start to roll. Ooh. And I've picked spot on tonight. I've got the absolutely perfect angle because I've got tons of stretch. It's actually quite difficult to be here. So I've found the right angle of tension for me, or the right line of tension, and the right angle to hit it. So you're looking for where you feel the most stretch. And for some of these stretches, you might not feel very much because you might be nice and loose in that area. When you're ready, do the contraction, so pressing down. Keep pressing. And then back off that contraction and just see if you can wring that little bit more motion out, keeping the breathing nice and steady. And then gently, very gently in my case, rolling out of that position. Itching your nose is optional, and then we go to the other side. So same thing, choose an angle, feel free to play with it once you're there, but otherwise roll it over. The way to kind of play with it is to choose an angle, start to go with the hips and go, no, that's a double, come back out of it, choose a slightly different angle, like I'm doing, and then go, ah, yeah, that's the daddy, that's the one. I wish I'd not tried that because I've found an even stronger one. So holding a passive stretch to start with. Then we're going to contract. So same thing, pushing down into the floor. Build it up. The reason we build it up is if you throw your whole effort into it, straight away you don't have time to work out whether it's a good thing or a bad thing for you to be doing. So you ramp it up nice and slow to a level that's doable. Breathe and hold. Keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And then back off. Relax as much as you can. And just go that little bit further if there's that extra couple of degrees of movement. And then same again, slowly, gently roll out of the stretch. Oh, and coming up to seated. So just coming into a straddle position to start with. So legs wide. We've just been playing with this a little bit. So for most of us, I don't think any of us are here are super bendy. So what we're working on really is that ability to kind of roll the pelvis from almost like a slumped position, rolling the pelvis forward so that you're more up on your sit bones. And so we're going to do that. You can use the hands as well to almost like if you tent the fingers so that you can almost use your hands to kind of push you up onto your sit bones. I think, David, I think you're doing that anyway. Yeah, I'm using the hands to push me onto my sit bones, which helps me kind of, then I slump backwards and then do the same again. But they just kind of helping me get that sense of, because when you're in this position, it's actually really hard to move your pelvis sort of voluntarily yourself. It's almost like your brain has trouble kind of connecting to it. So you can, I'm using the feet a little bit as well. So as I push with the feet or push out with the heels, that drops me back into that tail under position. And then I'm pulling with my heels and pushing with my hands to try and stick my tailbone out. And you might not feel like you've got very much motion, and that's okay. You're just sending the signals because eventually something will change if you do it enough. So all I'm doing is, like I say, rolling off my sit bones at the back and then trying to roll onto my sit bones to stick my tail out as much as I can. Rolling back off my sit bones and rolling back on. And I want to be as upright on my sit bones as I can. And just like before, you've got your belly button, you've got your chest. Chest stays proud. I'm trying to get my belly button somewhere over there, in front of me somewhere. So I'm leading with my belly button. You just come forward into a bit of a stretch. I'm not forcing anything, and I'm not just allowing, or I'm not collapsing against gravity either. I'm holding my body weight with the strength of my legs. There's a lot going on. I'm not just collapsing here. The contraction for here is going to be that same sense of pushing down into the floor to start with, and then also like you're trying to close the legs. So you've got to get the down to give you the friction so that when you try and close the legs as well, they don't actually move. So you don't want them to twang together. So I'm pushing down, pulling in, pushing down, pulling in, pushing down, pulling in, contracting, contracting, contracting. And then back off your contraction, try and release the tension as much as humanly possible, and then just see if you can get your belly button further forward. You know, you're crying for. And I'm using, again, I'm trying to almost like use the hip flexors, if you like, I suppose, probably hip flexors, to pull my belly button forward rather than just allowing gravity to do the work. And then nice and easy, sit back up out of that horrible position. I'm going to bend the legs slightly. Well, I'm going to bend one completely. So I'm going to come into some side bend stuff, but side bend for the upper back. So I'll show you what I mean, but you can narrow your straddle, so it doesn't need to be quite as wide. You're going to bend one, let's go right heel in towards centre, and this right foot coming in, doesn't matter really where it is, as long as it's just providing you with a little bit of, you know, support. So it's not stretchier, it might be, but it's more about it providing you with a little bit of support. So when we do side bends in this sort of position, we do all this kind of stuff, you find yourself, you're not actually getting into a side bend of the spine. You might get a little bit, I'm trying to get the side bend sort of more up here, yeah, into sort of your upper back area. So you bend your left knee slightly. You're going to take your hands behind your head. Now, don't crank on your neck. Make sure your head is pulling back into your hands and the elbows are nice and wide. And then we're going to twist so that your left rib cage is in line with, more or less, your left thigh. And then from there, you'll take your left elbow, and if you drop your left elbow to the inside of your knee, that will give you a stretch around the base of the rib cage, possibly, and a side bend into that part of the spine. If you were to then drop your elbow sort of closer, halfway down the thigh, see how that feels. And then if you want to drop your elbow even closer in, almost like trying to aim for your groin. You won't get that, but you get the idea. And then I'm pressing my elbow into my thigh and my thigh into my elbow so that I can twist and take my right elbow up to the sky. And then you're going to start to slide your left heel away, keeping the elbow and the knee in contact. So slide it away, it doesn't need to go straight, but as you slide it away, if you keep everything the same, you'll feel a deeper stretch into that right side. Once you've got as far as you want to go, breathe. And see if you can breathe into the right side of the rib cage. It's almost like the breath coming in opens the rib cage like an accordion. See if you can rotate a little bit further so you can see more of the ceiling. Make sure you're not cranking on your neck. Nice and light with the hands. And then bend the left knee to come out of that stretch and straighten the spine. And release, and then we switch sides. So the left knee becomes your I don't know, a little kickstand, a little bit of support. The right knee on an angle, so it's almost like a little bit of a straddle stretch and then bending it in. Same thing, hands come to the head. I'm going to rotate first, nice and tall. So trying to get my rib cage roughly in line with my thigh. And then same thing, you're choosing your options really. So the higher up my knee I go with the elbow, the lower the side bend in my ribs. The further I come towards my crotch, the higher up the side bend is. So I'm kind of picking a spot where I can feel probably the most oomph, bang for buck. From there, you're going to press knee into elbow, elbow into knees, and help you rotate around further. Make sure you're not cranking on the neck. Start to slide, go right foot away. Nice and gently and very slowly. Which will bring the elbow down with the leg, which in turn will increase the stretch. Same thing here, you breathe into the left side of the rib cage. And hold. If you can rotate that a little bit further. And then slide the knee, or slide the heel back towards you. So the knee comes back up and then slowly release out of that stretch. Just give your shoulders a little bit of a twirl, a little bit of a wriggle, whatever you kind of need to do just to loosen up any tension that you might build. Oh, we're doing that. Right, how are we doing for time? We're doing good, we're doing good. Right, so we're going to build up with the Superwoman, which is just your 4-point lift. So coming down onto your front for a start. So we're going to work 3 sections. We're going to work legs, mid-back, and then arms, and then we'll bring it all together. All right, so a lot of work really with this one. So to start with, for you guys, you can rest your forehead on the back of your hands. I'm just up on my elbow so I can see you guys what you're doing. You're going to bring your feet and knees together. So when you're here, your big toes are probably touching, your heels are probably kind of splayed out to the side. And you can just take a moment actually. Let's rock the hips from side to side. Let's just switch everything off. If you can loosely rock the hips from side to side, you know you're not holding that much tension in glutes and lower back. Just have a wiggle. Just switch everything up to start with. Okay, and then pause there. So we're going to create some tension in the legs. What I want you to do is roll your legs so that your heels come together as well as your big toes. So once the heels are touching, I want you to squeeze them together. And you're going to transfer that tension up to your inner thighs, so squeeze the inner thighs, and then into the glutes. And then release and roll the legs back out, or allow the legs to roll back out. Really want to go there. So same thing, your toes are together, roll the heels together, squeeze them, inner thighs, glutes, and then release. Same again, heels, inner thighs, glutes, and then release. Adding on heels, inner thighs, glutes, but then reach the toes away from you, which will put tension in your calves, with your kneecaps, so you're squeezing the quads and tensing the quads. Reach, 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 and then release all the tension, let it all go. You can check if you've released the tension, just give your hips a wiggle in between, that's fine. Same thing, roll the heels together, inner thighs, glutes, create the tension in the calves, the quads, and this time, see if you can, it's almost like you're trying to tuck your tailbone here, so you're trying to put your pubic bone into the mat. So you're actively tucking under. Hold that tension. Now see if you can float the legs off the ground. You're not going to go up high, but you're trying to keep the pubic bone down, keep all that tension, squeeze the heels, and then lower the legs and release all the tension. Have a bit of a wiggle if you need it. So by keeping the pubic bone into the mat, the act of lifting the legs off the floor should hopefully come more from the glutes rather than the lower back. You should be, it's almost like an active stretch of your hip flexors. All right, one more time.
heels, inner thighs, glutes, tuck the tail, tense the calves, tense the quads. Lots of activity in there. Float the legs off the floor as high as you can. Hold, and then release back there. Let all that tension go. Okay, so we're going to try and keep the feet and knees together at least. And depending on how this goes, we'll see whether we need tension in the legs or not. But when we bring up the upper body now, so if you bring your hands to your sides, so palms on my thighs, nose pointing towards the floor. So if we just said to lift the chest off the floor, so see if you can clear sort of nipple line or below chest, bra strap, chest, heart rate monitor, that kind of level. You probably feel how your lower back muscles punching to lift you up and then lower that down. So we're going to try and get some extension, that lift coming from your mid-back, sort of just below your shoulder blades almost. So let's do this again. So my legs are active, but not as much tension as before. This time I want you to roll your shoulders back away from the mat. So I'm picking up the front of my shoulders by squeezing the shoulder blades together, which opens the chest. And then float the chest up off the floor. Pulling the shoulder blades back, pulling the shoulder blades back. And then release back down. You can let the shoulders relax back down to the mat. So a little bit of tension in the legs, a little bit of tuck with the pelvis to try and keep you out of your lower back. Shoulder blades pull together. Give them a squeeze, and then lifting the chest. You need to almost feel like you're trying to press your bra strap, heart rate monitor level down into the mat. So I'm keeping that anchored while I try and lift my chest nipple line, if you like, so slightly higher, up off the mat. And then slowly release. So we'll do that again. Shoulders, squeeze them together. So there's a lot of work there. Bra strap level stays down. Try to bend at that part of the spine to come up. And then releasing back down. Oh, wiggle the hips, have a moment. And then it's my nemesis, the arms. It's always like the arms. I can do the legs, I can do the mid-back. The arms are hit with a passion. All right, so we take the arms out overhead. So depending on if you are, relatively bendy, you might get your arms straight out overhead. You might need to be more 5 to 1. If you're struggling, you might need to be more 10 to 2. Right, so we have a few options. Otherwise, thumbs are up, nose is pointing towards the floor. You're still going to have activity in the legs, still curling the tailbone under. You'll hold that tension and just see if you can get your arms up off the mat and hold. And then release back down. Do this. All right, same thing. Activity in the legs, tuck the tailbone. Lift the arms. You are reaching them longer. Try and maintain the space between your ear and your shoulder. So you're shrugging. And then slowly release. Have a moment, rock the hips, let some of that tension go. So we combine all that together. So it's not looking for a massive lift of the arms and the legs. Try and really even it out. So we want a nice even lift of the height through the feet and the arms, the legs and the arms. So let's give that a go. So roll the heels together, find the tension in the legs, reach them long, reach the arms long, see if you can float everything up off the mat. The longer you reach, the less work there is in the lower back. You're still trying to press that mid part of this. That's it. Heart rate monitor level, bra strap level, down into the mat. Otherwise, keep everything else lifted. So if you can come up that a little bit higher, and then slowly release everything back down. And rock from side to side. And breathe and breathe. Side and breathe. But that's all I want.
pushing yourself up to seated. Back onto your bottle. So we're looking for a diamond position with the legs. So it's not we're not coming into a butterfly stretch where the heels come close. You want it's a long diamond, I suppose, isn't it? As opposed to a small one. Yeah, nice and loose to start with. So you, because we're just allowing the legs to relax out to the side, there might be parts of your feet touching, but don't worry about, your soles of your feet don't need to be kind of pressing towards each other. You just want to let that tension go and almost relax into that sort of diamond position. A moment there. Hands on the shins, loose, everything loose, everything loose. And we're going to do the reverse of what we were doing before. You're going to allow yourself to sit back off your sit bones. And chin comes down to the chest. So I'm slumping essentially. It's a controlled slump. And just rounding the spine, lengthening the back of the neck. Taking a moment there. And then if you hold on to your shins and try and take that rounded shape of the spine back to the wall behind you. And by holding my shins, then as I round more and more and more, I get a stretch between my shoulder blades. Possibly into the sort of muscles down either side of the spine, but mainly shoulder blades. And breathing. And just holding. Here, if you can breathe into the back ribs, and find that stretch into the shoulder blades and those parts of the ribs increases. And then slowly release. And so you're at the moment, you kind of sat back slightly, like hammocking. Keep the rounded shape, but just bring that forward. So as you can see, what that allows me to do, I can slide my hands down my legs, and now I can kind of, I can hold on to my feet. I'm still nice and round, dead chilled out, nice and relaxed. So you keep hold of the left foot. I'm going to bring your right hand onto your right knee, so on top of the right knee. And I'm pushing my hand into my knee into my hand. And I'm going to use that to try and straighten my right arm and take me into a rotation. So I'm looking up towards the ceiling. And try and make sure that the right shoulder is pulling down and away from my ear, which frees up my neck. So pulling left foot, pushing right hand, twisting round. And breathing. And then slowly release. So slide the right hand down to the foot, slide the left hand up to the knee. Keeping space between your ear and your shoulder. Start to try and straighten the left arm. You're obviously going to have a fight with somebody who might be itching my nose is doing. So I'm pulling with my right hand, pushing with my left. Trying to take myself into rotation. Your choice how much you want to look with your head, neck and shoulders, or head and neck I should say. If the neck twist feels good, do that. If it doesn't, you want to keep it more neutral, that's okay too. Don't force it. And then nice and gently release out of that. So we're coming into just your piriformis stretch, you know, your outside hip stretch. So the easy option, if you like, is to cross one foot on the outside of the straight leg. If you can, bend the other leg as well. Yeah, so we're in this knotted position. As best you can, you want to be aiming to get your back sit bone down on the floor, and this base of the big toe. So if you see I'm on the little toe edge of my foot, what I'm trying to do is reach the base of my big toe, the ball of my big toe, down to the floor, which is actually mobilizing the forefoot. Now, as I do that, this is how your toes and your hips are all connected. As I push the base of the big toe down, I've lost the sit bone. Yeah, so this is my outside hip not giving enough for me to get this mobility through my foot. So whatever you need to do is kind of, it's a wiggle, isn't it? You know, I'm trying to work out how I can get the base of the big toe down and my sit bone. And that's a lot of work even in and of itself. So without losing any of that, wrap the opposite elbow around. The hand that is tenting behind you should be touching your bottom. Yeah, it should be touching your body so that when you lift your spine up, if you're out here somewhere, you're still slumped. So bring the hand in, lift the spine and then rotate. So I'm pulling the knee in towards my chest, twisting, lifting the spine, dropping the sit bone, trying to find the base of the big toe. Too much to think about. Slowly release, and then you're going to twist the other way. So a bit like those side push-ups we were doing the other day. You're going to bring both hands to the mat and bend the elbows. So you're taking it into a push-up. Yeah, so I'm trying to take the chest down to the floor and keep my knee pointing to the ceiling. You can do this like the side push-ups we were doing. You take the side of the head down. You know, like you're trying to get the front shoulder and the side, or the ear, I suppose it is. And all the while I'm pushing my knee up towards the ceiling. And then up and away. And we switch to the other side. And we hope this side is better. Oh. So take a moment to wiggle your bits around until you find your sweet spot today. Same thing again. Can you reach? So I'm not reaching my big toe down. I'm not doing this with the toe. I'm trying to reach the base of the big toe, the ball of the joint, down to the mat. And in fact, I'm going to try and get that anchored first. Actually, I have to look at it and make it do it on this side. Once I've got that, then I'm going to try and sink my back sit bone down to the mat. Just touching, just touching. Once I've got all of that organised, I'm going to wrap the elbow around, sink down even more, because it's a little bit easier once you've got that. Tent the fingers, they should be touching your bottom. Lift the spine, final rotation, get into the stretch. Keep reaching the big toe, reaching the sit bone. Big toe to floor, sit bone to floor. As you do all of this. And then same again, gently unravel. Take both hands to the other side. So one in line with the hip, roughly one in line with the foot, but about a foot's distance away, just enough so you've got room to then be able to take your chest towards the floor, ear, front of the back shoulder, knee pointing up to the ceiling. I'm actively pushing it away. So I'm still trying to keep the base of my big toe pressing down into the floor, but then I'm trying to push the knee away. And then nice and gently push the floor away and unravel yourself. And because we've finished up with that, we don't need to do the pretzel. So you'll be pleased to hear. Plus Charlotte isn't here. It's no fun doing the pretzel if Charlotte's not here to moan about it. Oh, dear me. I feel wrung out. Is everybody okay? I'm all right, I think. I'm not sure. My body feels abused.
Yeah, I felt that.
Yeah, I was got that.
Good, I'm glad. And so he's kind of slowed it down a little bit and added in the contractions and held stuff for a bit longer. So you might be a bit sore tomorrow. It depends, you know, it does for me. That kind of slowing it down and holding stuff longer makes me a little bit grumpy the following morning, but you know, you get a bit of benefit from it as well. You get a lot of benefit from it. Ah, dear. Right. Anybody need me? Any questions? Anybody want me for anything? No?
No, you can go.
Thank you. Because I'm going
Well,
straight to bed.
The pre-logging on thing worked. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Oh,
Yeah,
Chloe,
yeah.
that's great. I wondered
Smashing.
because I could just see you, I could see you struggling to get
Hi,
on.
guys.
What I thought.
See ya.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Kelly.
Jess.
See
See you later.
Bye.
Good, Claire. All right. See you later, chaps. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.